Hi, everyone, and welcome to our admissions talk on writing both your Common App and your supplemental essays. We're joined by Maddie Jacobs of University of Pennsylvania. Thank you so much for being here, Maddie.
Delighted to join you all. So exciting seeing more people joining the session. So, without further ado, again, my name is Maddie Jacobs. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an assistant director of admissions at the University of Pennsylvania, which is located in Philadelphia in the States. But today, I'm going to provide some tips and tricks for writing your college essays for all schools that you're going to be looking at applying. So, here's a picture of our awesome campus, but I'm delighted to be sort of virtually in Canada tonight. Um, so, essay. Really, this is how we get to know you. This is an opportunity for you to sort of speak directly with the admissions committee. And so, this is a really important part that you can really start thinking about, as early as your 11th year or maybe first or second year of CEGEP. So, here are the different application components, and a lot of highly selective institutions will look at each of these components sort of equally. And so you can see that your essays are weighted equally with your extracurriculars and with your academic information. And so that's why we're going to spend some time today unpacking what to write about, how to write about it, and the best ways to approach the essays. So, the different types, there's going to be those general essays that all schools see. So, either the Common App or the Coalition App. So, this personal statement is really going to be sort of your calling card for all the schools you're applying to. I might sound like your English teacher right now, but remember your audience. The people reading your essay on the Common or Coalition app are going to be lots of different schools. So you don't want to put the names of any specific schools in that essay because everybody you apply to is going to see that. Also, remember that lots of different admissions officers are going to be looking at these essays. So you want to choose a topic and write about things that a lot of people will understand. So if you write something in a different language, make sure you translate it. If you're using any acronyms, spell those out. If you're making any jokes, make sure that they're generally going to be universally funny and not super niche to a certain type of humor. Things like that. So remember that lots of people are going to see them. And then we get to the supplemental essays. Not all schools will ask for supplements, but many highly selective universities certainly will. And so those supplemental school-specific essays should be just that, school-specific. And we're going to talk about strategies for writing a strong supplemental essay in a couple slides. So why is this important? Again, we read about you in so many different parts of the file, but this is your chance to really talk directly to us. It's one of the last things that you'll put together for your application. You know, your grades you've been working on for 4 years, activities, 4 years, your teacher recommendations, you've already been taking those classes. So this is a great opportunity when you get to your final year of school before applying to really influence the last piece that goes into the application. It's a great way to show us your voice. It gives us a writing sample. And most importantly, we just want to know a little bit more about you. What is your application incomplete without? So, sometimes we do this in person. Of course, we've been doing it virtually, but we'll do like a quick little fact or fiction. So, the first one, admissions officers, we only want to read about certain topics. There's certain things where it's like, yes, you're more likely to get admitted if you write about this specific essay. And that is false. Truly, and I really do mean this, any topic that you write about is we are excited to read about. I always use the example 5 students could write about running the same cross country race. And I would get 5 very different pieces of writing because it's all about your unique voice and your unique perspective. So that's 5 different perspectives on the same race, and I'm going to see 5 different perspectives. I'm going to see 5 different unique personalities and get 5 really different takeaways from those essays. The next one. So spelling, grammatical mistakes, or automatic rejection. Definitely false. We all make mistakes, we all have typos, but you certainly want to proofread. Make sure that you have at least one other person take a look at those essays, again, to catch things where it's like, you use this acronym, make sure you spell it out, or this part didn't make so much sense if they didn't know you, so make sure you give a little bit more explanation. And of course, they might catch some typos. but don't let them go crazy with the red pen. Make sure that it is your voice that is coming through ultimately and not that of your editor or whoever is looking over your essays. Next, admissions officers don't even read the essays. Why put effort into it? You're just going to skip over it. You're only really looking at my GPA, right? This is also false. We look very closely at the essays. For selective institutions, we have a lot of students who have strong academics, who are engaged in their school, and so one of the ways that we really can help differentiate is by reading your writing. We want to get to know you. And so the essays, they help us do just that. They help us get to know you, especially in the personal statement, but they also help give us a sense of your fit and why you want to come to our specific institution. And finally, you must write about something that's never been written about before. If we've read it, you cannot write about it again. Also false. So they are all false. Again, it's not about the subject of what you're writing about so much as the content. We want to hear your voice. So, some strategies to help get you started on essay writing. Write out something you're comfortable about. Don't feel like you need to write about astrophysics. If you don't know anything about astrophysics, don't feel like you need to write about a service opportunity, or don't feel like you need to write about having triumphed. Write about whatever you want. One of the best essays that I ever read as an admissions officer was about peanut butter. This girl just loved peanut butter. She loved making it herself. She loved finding different recipes that focused on peanut butter. She loved sharing it with her friends and family. I genuinely do not remember whether she got in, but I remember that essay because I remember thinking, yeah, she just loves peanut butter. I can tell that she's funny. I can tell that she is excited about the topic, and I can tell that she wrote about whatever she wanted to. Definitely, if you can demonstrate emotional maturity, you're like, well, how do I do that? Just be honest, just be candid. If you write about something that you've overcome, say what you learned from that experience, say how that helped you to grow and get where you are today. But also don't feel like you have to be like, and now I'm in my final form. I am as mature as I will ever be, because, we all have room for growth. We're all constantly learning and growing. Give yourself time. I really, really want to emphasize this. Do not wait till the last minute, either for your personal statement or for those school supplements, because you don't want to rush and you don't want to be writing an essay that isn't your absolute best foot forward. So really start thinking about them over the summer before you begin applying. And I know that July or August seems years away from those January deadlines, but your senior fall or your final year of school before you apply to college, it's going to go so fast. You're going to get busy real quick with your course assignments. So I really recommend starting over the summer so that you have that headspace and you have a little bit of free time to just start drafting. Just, write stuff down on a piece of paper. You may completely throw it out, change your topic, but just sit down and start giving it a think. All right. Some commonly used essay topics. Again, commonly used doesn't mean we don't want to see it. It's the sports essay. I won the game and it was the greatest, but I learned the value of teamwork, or I dropped out of the race and I learned the value of, accepting that, sometimes you need to go easier on your body, and that's okay too. Maybe you've taken a trip and you learned about a different culture and it gave you a different perspective. The autobiography. Again, if you write about yourself, that's terrific. Sometimes folks will write about their grandmother and how influential they are, or a parent, or someone in their life that they really connect with. Remember that we're learning about you and less about that other person, so you can certainly speak about the influence they've had, but make sure at the end of the day that I'm excited to admit you to your campus, not your grandmother. And then, basically, if it's important to you, it's important to us. A great awesome resource that you have is to bounce ideas off of, or even have the EdUSA staff help proofread your essay. So, they can take a look at it and say, yes, this makes sense. I don't know you, or I do know you, and, this is what an admissions committee might think. Or, I caught some typos, or maybe you want to rethink the way that you framed this so that it's more, easy or more straightforward for a broad audience to understand. So that's an amazing, awesome opportunity to get some outside feedback. So tell us a story. Sometimes students will choose to have the story happen over a single day or maybe over a couple of weeks. Maybe it's over the course of an hour. Whatever the timeline is or whatever the topic is, you want there to be kind of a beginning, middle, and end. Details definitely matter. Be specific, be illustrative, use strong descriptors, strong verbs. And then, of course, ask for some feedback and ask for somebody else's opinion. Again, remember that you're going to be selling this or showing this to a broad audience. So sometimes students will write it in poetry, in free verse, or they'll write it like a computer science essay, and they'll write it sort of like code. You can certainly be creative and write in different formats like that, but remember, a broad audience. So sometimes the stuff that's written in code or in very like high level poetry, I'm like, that's beautiful, but I don't know what you're talking about. So really make sure that whoever's reading it they can read it in one go and understand what you were trying to convey. And they're not sitting there thinking, well, if I interpret it this way, it means one thing, but if I think about it this other way, well, I'm not so sure what they're really talking about. Make sure that it is somewhat straightforward in whatever format you decide to write in. So some common mistakes that we see: overly formal. You've thesaurused every word to find a longer word, and you've made it sound so formal and so proper that it really just doesn't really give us a sense of your voice. It's okay to use contractions. It's okay to use exclamation marks. It's okay to have dialogue. It's okay for it to sound like it was written by a 17, 18, 19-year-old, because it was. Again, too many SAT words. We're not your writing teacher. We're not worried about the vocabulary you're using. Again, we're really just interested in hearing what you have to say. Don't feel like you need to sound a certain way or come across as super artsy or super intellectual or this or that. Really just be yourself, because you're going to have the easiest time writing it. And when people go to edit it, they're going to say, yeah, this really does sound like you. This is representative. Sometimes I'll, look at a student's essay and say, is this an 18-year-old or is this like an 80-year-old man? You want it to sound like yourself. And sometimes if you're trying too hard to sound academic or to sound a certain way, it just won't come off as authentic. So, supplemental essays. Why do we ask for them? When we have a lot of really strong, really competitive applicants, sometimes we want to find more ways to help differentiate them. And what we're really looking for is how would you contribute to and benefit from 4 years on our campus. They can help you envision, why actually do I want to go to this school? Envision your journey. So I really encourage students to always do a little bit of research for these essays, because it informs you, is this a school that I'm interested in? Is there anything I want to do here? And conversely, informs us as the admissions committee, is this a student who really wants to come to our school versus an elite school that has the major that they want on the East Coast in the United States that offers research? Because that applies to a lot of different schools. So really think about why you're applying to this school, because it's going to help you make a decision when you get all those exciting admit letters. And it's going to help us as an admissions committee decide, are you going to be a fit with our institution? All right. So make sure you answer the question. I know I sound like your English teacher, but if you don't say anything specific about that institution, you haven't answered the question. And I know that it can be really tempting, especially if you're applying to a lot of schools, to just sort of cut and paste a sort of general statement about yourself and what you want to study, and then use that for each institution. But trust me, it won't add anything to your application. This is an opportunity for you to say, these are the specific programs and opportunities at your institution that are going to help me achieve my goals and help me engage in your community. Some examples of things that you can write about and include: classes. I read about this class. This looks really awesome. I can't wait to study with this professor. Study abroad opportunities. I saw that you have a program, Penn in London. I can't wait to try that out. Research opportunities. I see that you're looking into microbial biology in this one specific area. I'm excited about that. So just be specific. Really spend some time on our website. We have tons and tons of information about potential programs, classes, professors, etc. So spend some time. It's really going to help you get excited about all the amazing opportunities to take advantage of. So make sure that it's specific to each school. Make sure you're not just cut and pasting between the schools, because it doesn't add anything to your file. We can tell that it's been cut and pasted. Sometimes students even forget to change the name of the institution. So really spend some time on these essays and don't wait until the last minute. Show us that you've done some research. Don't just rewrite your resume, because don't forget, we'll have just reviewed your academic and extracurricular activities. And so we know what your transcript looks like. You don't need to tell us the classes you took, and you don't need to tell us all the activities you were in. We're going to learn about that in a different section. If you want to specifically reference one activity or a couple of courses that really inspired you to study what you want to study, that's certainly okay. But remember that we're reading your application all in one sitting, and we're reading it all together all at once. So help us kind of form a narrative and don't repeat too many pieces that we would have just seen in another part. Proofread, same as the other ones. Beware of that copy and paste. I can't tell you how many students really fall into that trap of just using that form essay. They forget to switch the school. They forget to switch the name of the professors or classes or things. And that really just doesn't help us determine how you're going to contribute to and benefit from our community. So just as you would have people look at your Common App essay or your Coalition App essay, make sure that you have folks edit these essays too. So to have time to have editors, you're going to want to write them a little bit in advance. So a little bit of a flow chart here. So what do you want to study? And remember that it's okay to be undecided. I really do mean that. I've been doing admissions for a little while now, and it really can be a strong student who is undecided. If you know or you think you know what you want to study, also remember that you're going to get to college and start exploring so much, and you might find something that you never knew you wanted to study and get excited about that. So certainly keep an open mind. So what do I want to study, or what general interests do I have? What kind of impact do I want to have in that college or that university setting? Why am I applying to school? What do I want to get out of these 4 years? Again, you don't have to have your career set out. You don't have to have the next 10 years planned. I certainly did not. But it's good to start to think about what you are trying to accomplish and why you're applying to college. And then, what is this question asking me? We're asking you some of these things, but we're also going to be a little bit more specific in some ways. For example, at Penn, one question asks about community. How are you going to engage outside the classroom? The other question asks more about academics inside the classroom. So make sure that you're answering and tailoring those responses to each of those specific questions. There's so much information on the internet, and I know sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming, especially when you're looking at lots of different schools. I think that it can sometimes be helpful if you organize all the information in one place, not just research on courses and majors and minors, but also on deadlines, on early application programs, on financial aid. I really, really strongly recommend organizing it all in one place, maybe an Excel spreadsheet or a Google Doc, but really make sure that as you're going about searching different schools, connecting with different current undergraduate students, that you're writing stuff down, because before you know it, you're going to be applying to school, and you want to make sure that you have all that information in one place. As you're looking, start by looking in the areas you're interested in and let yourself kind of go down a little bit of like a rabbit hole. Click around and see what is interesting to you. You may use some of it in your essay, you may not, but know that it's really okay to just kind of explore, see what's out there, and see what our university can do to help support you in achieving your goals. So just give yourself the freedom to write that messy first draft. It's okay if you don't have any words from that first draft in your final draft, but just start getting something down on the paper, whether that's just sitting down with a blank document. Sometimes it can be nice to write with pen and paper so you don't have all the distractions of having your laptop open. Make sure that you're being descriptive. Make sure that you tell us more about why you want to come to our school rather than the great things at our school. I'm pretty aware of the opportunities at Penn. I want to know why you're interested in those specific opportunities. And again, be specific. I keep saying that, but it really is so, so important. And it's a key thing that a lot of really compelling applicants don't always do. They sometimes think, well, Again, you're not going to read those essays. Why would I try very hard? I promise you, we really do read those essays. And we read every single file that comes to our university. Nobody is automatically denied. And I can say that of a lot of peer institutions, it's a human process. And so the essays and the comprehensive whole person review really are an important part of that. So, this is an opportunity. I know it can seem daunting, and I know that it's hard to write about yourself. I'm the same way. I start writing cover letters and resume stuff, and I'm like, I don't know about myself. I just am. I am myself. But it can be helpful if you kind of start by talking through with someone like, if you had to describe me in a few words, what would you say? Or, what's something that I have found meaningful? So maybe, just talking through with a friend or a parent or, a loved one. This is an opportunity for you to just get to reflect a little bit on what has been your high school experience and what you want to get out of the next 4 years. Just be yourself, be yourself, be yourself. And remember, it's low stakes. It's just one part of the application process. And we're really just looking to get to know you. So we have a little bit of time left, and I would love to hear any questions that you have about the essay or how we evaluate it, or really anything about what I've covered. And I'll stop sharing my screen so I can engage with folks. Here we go. And if there are no questions, maybe I did a great job. I answered all the questions. We're all ready to write our essays.
I am sure the questions will start flooding in. Thank you so much for that information, Maddie.
Oh, sure.
And as Maddie mentioned, Education USA is one of the places where you can get somebody to look at your essays. And I wholeheartedly endorse every piece of advice given during this session.
Thank you.
So you mentioned the peanut butter essay, and I loved that. Is there another essay that's really stuck out for you during your reading time?
Sure. Trying to think without, the ones that I read today, like we'll let those ones go and we'll let those settle a little bit because they're current students. But other really strong essays, sometimes find really good ones about students engaging with their family in different ways and things that they've done that are meaningful to them, with grandparents or with their parents. Because I find that when students talk about their family, they soften a little bit, and those are warm memories. So, again, talk about something that is familiar to you and talk about something that makes you happy, because you're going to have to read this draft a couple of times. I see an awesome question in the chat. Would you say some subjects are too personal? That is really for you to decide. The subjects, I would say, just like bar entirely, really anything to do with going to the restroom. Again, remember that it's a broad audience. A lot of people are going to read this. They might not all be comfortable reading about anything. If you're reading about I would say that's too personal. I also would say sometimes students talk about like their lab dissections. Totally great. We love bio. We love science. Just don't be so graphic. But as far as too personal, I would say whatever you are comfortable sharing. That's really just a personal decision. Sometimes I get the question, I had an experience that caused a dip in grades, or, it affected my high school experience. Do I have to share that in the Common App essay, even if I don't feel like that's my defining narrative? And I would say, if you don't want that to be your defining narrative, write about something else. If you still feel that that's information we should know because that's going to contextualize, maybe a little dip in grades or how you engage in your community, there is always the additional information section. But again, don't feel like you have to tell us everything about your personal life. Share what you are comfortable sharing, and we will evaluate that with whatever you choose to share with us.
Yeah, and Maddie, I think a good offshoot of that, oftentimes like religion and politics come up as areas to tread lightly on, especially if people are sharing kind of like very specific opinions. What is the advice you usually give around topics where people are maybe expressing a point of view where a reader might have an opposite point of view?
Yeah, awesome question. I would say absolutely, you can talk about politics, you can talk about religion, as long as you come at it with an open mind, right? And acknowledge that there are two sides and say that, yeah, this is a debate. And I am looking forward to further developing, further discussing, further developing my ideas, and really learning about all perspectives. So as long as you come at it with an open mind and you're willing to engage in really meaningful conversation about that, I think it's totally fine. It's when you say, this is my opinion, this is the only opinion, nobody else's opinion matters, that might be more problematic. Let's see, I see a question. Is there anything I should add if I want to apply to a certain major? Example, a chemistry major. Again, there's no one thing we are looking for. We are really looking at essays. So there's no one thing where I open up the essay, I'm like, I hope they mention this one thing. Really, whatever is important to you to mention, certainly important to us. So every essay looks very, very different, which is a good thing. We don't want to see the same thing over and over again. But really, especially with the supplemental essays for the schools and what you want to study, like, where did this interest come from and where do you want to go with it at our institution and beyond? But as far as specific things about, intended major, anything like that, no, there's no one thing that we're going to be looking for. Let's see. What sticks out to admissions officers within essays? Well, let's see. Authenticity, and it's like, well, how do I be authentic? Just write, just start typing out. If just write as you would write to a friend, or a close relative. Things that stick out, sometimes students try to be funny. Remember that, again, this needs to work for a broad audience. So have a bunch of people read that joke before you submit that, because if one person doesn't find it funny, maybe steer clear. Other things that stand out in essays, sometimes students really try to grab our attention with like a really shocking first line. They're like, and that was the day that I almost died, or something like that. Like, don't feel like you need to have some crazy first line or something like that to get our attention. You have our attention because we're reading your file. By submitting your application, you get our full attention while we look at your file. So don't feel like you have to have some like crazy shocking thing where I'm like, wait, she almost died? Oh, okay. No, it turns out that she was just super excited about, getting selected for this competition, whatever it is. Let's see. How much time is spent on essays? Is it like the way recruiters treat job applications? They only spend a minute or so? I cannot speak for every school. Every institution has a different review process. But I can say that, we spend a few minutes on applications. And I know that it's so unsatisfying saying like, it really depends, but it does really depend. Some students, they've transferred a bunch of times, so we kind of got to piece together this transcript. Some students write longer essays than others. Some students, there's just more to piece together, less. So we spend different amounts of time on different parts of the application for every student. And that's a good thing, because that means that we're going to give your application a unique review, and we're not just going through like robots formulaically, just like crunching through them. Yes, there's always a word limit on the essays. It's about 650 words for Common App or Coalition App. For school supplemental essays, they will tell you what the word limits are. Yeah. Let's see what else. How does the undergrad application differ from law school application? I've never applied to law school, so I can't specifically say, but I know that for undergraduate programs in the States, you're typically applying to an intended major or intended division, whereas with law school, that you're going to study law and everybody's going to study law. So it's going to be a little bit more targeted, but I don't know so much about that one. How are students from Canada weighed against students in the USA? I think that's a really great question. And one that we get even from students in the US, how am I going to be compared to other students from my town or my school or whatever? We will never sit and hold two students up side by side. Sorry, my screen's funny. It's like cutting off my hands, but we're never going to hold them up side by side and say, we can only take one. It's this one versus this one. Who's better? It really is so important to focus on context. So, no two students have the same context. And so, it's really all about considering you within your school, within your family's context, considering your academic journey. And so, that's true of students in Canada versus the US. So I'm going to read you in the Canadian context. You're going to have different looking transcripts. You're going to have, some of you will have CEGEP. Some of you will have different activities. So we're really not comparing you against students in the US. We're really looking at you in your Canadian context. And it is my job as the territory manager to understand the nuances of what I'm going to see in Canada, because I'm not trying to translate what you've done over to an American context. I'm reading you as Canadians because that's what we're excited about. We're really looking to bring some Canadian voices to our campus. So to compare you to students from the US wouldn't be very productive because yeah, we'll take some students from the US, but we're looking for those Canadian perspectives. So we're looking to see what you're like in your specific context. Context is key.
Well, thank you so much, Maddie. And our favorite question: what kind of extracurriculars stand out? We'll take this last one, and then we're going to wrap up the session.
I love this question because, as Jenica and I were joking a little bit earlier, what would happen if we said yes? There's one specific thing you got to run out and you've got to do this activity. Everybody go. No, there is no one thing that we are looking for. Truly, anything you're excited about, do that because you're going to do it well. You're going to have depth of engagement and you're going to be a happier student, a happier applicant. So really, there's no one thing that we are looking for. We just want you to engage in ways that are meaningful to you and meaningful to your community. Because that's going to mean that you're going to be a meaningful member of our community and that you do things that you genuinely love and not just to build a resume. So do what you care about, write about what you care about, and trust me, I know the application process can be stressful, but it really will work out. You're all bright, you're all talented, you're all very competent, and you're all going to come out on the other end of this excited about where you're going to spend the next chapter of your academic career. So I really thank you all for your attention. Thank you so much, Jenica, for putting this all together, for being such an amazing host. Thank you all.
Thank you too. Everybody, please use the emojis to give Maddie a round of applause for that awesome information. You can watch this as many times as you want on our YouTube channel, which we will we'll upload it and send that out to everybody who attended today. So we'll go ahead and shut down this session, and then we will also be closing up the event. So thanks everybody for attending. Have a good night.